Hello, humans, and welcome to the Doing Digital Forum 2025.
Henri Arslanian, co-founder and managing partner of 9Blocks Capital Management, global crypto leader, global Armenian. Henri, we are so thrilled to finally welcome you to the Doing Digital Forum. As the head of institutional level crypto hedge fund, your insights are invaluable. And Henri was set to join us last year, you remember, and the wait has only made his presence today even more special.
And then what happened? Donald Trump, whether we like it or not, discovered crypto. And this is a pretty big game-changing element because he was very anti-crypto previously. Just last week, his two sons bought a stake in probably one of the biggest Bitcoin miners in the world. Of course, he launched his Trump coin, and then his wife launched her own coin called Mehania coin. But the reality is actually people around him, even people with whom the Armenian government now is in talks, are extremely pro-crypto. The US announced a couple weeks ago a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And the narrative is changing as well. All the same big powerhouses in finance who used to tell you, avoid crypto, don't touch it, have suddenly changed their perspective as well. And the big question, as we're seeing now this point of view in the US change, are smaller countries, should they start looking at buying digital assets and make a strategic decision on this regard? And the big question becomes to all of us, if we think about asymmetrical benefits, is this something us as a nation we should think about as well? So should we, for example, encourage tokenization? Very happy that we finally have regulations in Armenia. I wish we would have it 2-3 years ago, but at the end, at least we have some set of regulations right now that we can go with. Is it perfect? No, but at least we have something.
Thank you. This is a very exciting time in the history of money and in the future of finance, especially when it comes to digital assets. And the message today was there's so many changes going on in the history of money and currently in the future of digital assets. From the rise of Bitcoin, the growth of Bitcoin, decentralized finance, stable coins, NFTs, and so on and so on. What I think is very interesting now for a country like Armenia, because of the geopolitical changes going on, for example, the change of the stance on Bitcoin from the US, this provides a unique opportunity for Armenia, the Armenian government, to make a bold move on Bitcoin and digital assets, and actually take the advantage of this asymmetrical advantage that actually embracing Bitcoin can provide in this changing geopolitical landscape. Well, for example, if I was in the Armenian government, one thing I would consider is actually making a statement by buying, say, $20, $30 million of Bitcoin, or $10 million to start. And the reasons are quite simple. For example, now the US has changed its stance on Bitcoin. And actually, this is very good messaging that actually we're aligning with the new vision and a new stance of the US, for example. Second, if we're looking at making a big, bold move from a marketing perspective, saying this country is open for innovation, this country is open to the latest technologies, nothing beats leading by action and actually doing so. And by the way, many other countries have done the same. Countries like Bhutan have over $1 billion in Bitcoin. Countries like El Salvador have a couple of $100 million of Bitcoin. El Salvador is a very good example. A country that was really the country with the highest crime rate in the world now is getting millions of dollars of investments in the digital asset space. Why? Because its leadership and government made a bold stance on embracing Bitcoin. My suggestion, if I was a member of the government here, would be to make a bold move when it comes to Bitcoin, for example, so that we embrace technology and at the same time, the investment in Bitcoin, yes, it's taxpayers' money, but provides this asymmetrical benefit as well as part of our normal reserves that we hold as a country, including gold, dollars, euros, and other currencies as well. Is it easy? Is it a conservative thing to do? Absolutely not. Is it a bold and potentially visionary move? Absolutely. Of course, for the government to buy Bitcoin is risky. But let me put the question another way. Why would otherwise today at a conference like today, we spoke multiple times about El Salvador and Bhutan, two countries that I guarantee you would have never been part of a conversation of any conference on doing digital or any like tech conference. So making such a move for a country like Armenia puts Armenia on the map, gets tremendous visibility, really sends the right message to the crypto and Web3 and tech industry that we are open for business and that we embrace digital assets. And fourth, as part of the changing geopolitics in the region and globally, shows that we are aligning with some of the countries we are trying as a country, as my understanding is, to align with. And fifth, from a purely economics, financial perspective, if we believe that there's actually hyperinflation going on, there's currency devaluation, which are things that we may very well see, actually embracing Bitcoin is similar to buying gold, provides potentially a very good investment as well. For all these reasons, I believe that leadership that is bold, visionary, and is not afraid to make decisions actually should consider actually embracing Bitcoin and making it as a country strategy. You know, when it comes to developed countries, often they don't need to. The UK, everybody talks about the UK, everybody talks about the US, everybody talks about China. They don't need to do this. But I would argue even some of the big developed countries have done so as well. The United States declaring the strategic Bitcoin reserve of almost $20 billion. So it's not only the small countries, also big countries as well. But as a small country, where we don't have $20 billion in reserve, one thing we could have is both leadership, visionary, and actually bold decision making. And you know, as our Armenian DNA, we are always at the cutting edge of technologies. We're always looking at sitting on the edge of our seat, seeing how the tides of change happen. And actually, I really believe for a government to make a bold stance on Bitcoin in particular, considering the global changes going on and how Bitcoin is being embraced, would really put Armenia on the map.
We still obviously don't know who Satoshi is, but this one document, basically the genius behind, allowed to send value from one person to another with no intermediary. The beauty of Bitcoin as well, every single transaction is public. I can go right now online and see every single Bitcoin transaction that happened around the world. Let me give you a piece of advice if you're doing something illegal. If you're looking at laundering funds, committing something illegal, do not use Bitcoin. You will 100% get caught because every transaction is public and traceable. And the crazy part about this is until 2 months ago, there was more assets in Bitcoin ETFs than gold ETFs in the United States. And now, whether you like it or not, this asset that we all laughed at, that we disregarded, said, vochinch, or thought it was a scam, or nobody paid value, especially from policymakers, is now over $3 trillion. But now probably the most important element in crypto is geopolitics. I tell everybody, if you're interested in crypto, you should read the crypto news, but you should also read The Economist. Because really what's happening geopolitically has a big impact, especially now with what's happening in the US. What many people don't know, the US has around almost $20 billion of Bitcoin, mainly seized assets actually. When they go after criminal organization, they seize them. Fun fact, by the way, all the biggest investigators in the US are actually Armenian. Most of this 20 billion are seized by actually Armenian guys that work for law enforcement in the US. Some of the biggest crypto companies, governments, regulators, central banks, their monitoring is done in Yerevan. We have contracts with companies. The contract specifically specifies that the only people we want working here are Armenians in Armenia. This is very similar to what I mentioned before Taiwan. Why nobody invades Taiwan? Because there's TSMC, there's microchips. And our goal is if we can create companies like here in this space where the talent is already here, we can innovate. Even in my hedge fund, we have many of our staff here based in Armenia. And many around the world, many of the leading companies, we get together, there's a massive Armenian ecosystem. Because this industry moves fast, you need to be outside the box, you need to have very good EQ, you need to be very good in sciences and technology, and these are things that naturally come good to Armenians.
I'm very convinced that Bitcoin is only 16 years old right now, but it will be in 10, 15 years when our kids, our grandchildren watch this interview, they're gonna laugh that we were debating whether Bitcoin will have value. I'm convinced that actually right now Bitcoin is about 10% of the market cap of gold. I'm convinced it's gonna actually match or if not surpass it in the next couple of years. I'm convinced that our kids, as part of their investments they do, Bitcoin will be just a normal portion of those investments that they make. Right now, technologies like Bitcoin, in the same way the internet was scary in the 1990s, in the same way the first time people interacted with the internet, the World Wide Web, it was scary, but people got accustomed to it and now it's part of our daily lives. Same thing will happen to digital currencies, in particular Bitcoin. So I think this is why, I recommend to everybody to at least experiment with it and then try to at least understand what it is, and then actually makes everybody, at least you understand it, then you can make a better judgment of it afterwards. Bitcoin and digital currencies solve very practical problems. Let's take, first of all, Bitcoin as an example. People want a hedge. In many parts of the world, we're very lucky here in Armenia. We have a great central bank. We have great policymakers. Unfortunately, the majority of the world does not have that privilege. So if somebody living, for example, countries from Turkey to Argentina to Latin America to big parts of Africa, they don't trust their central banks. And look at countries like Lebanon. The entire banking system was disappeared. The same happened in Cyprus a couple of years ago. So I think this is for a lot of people around the world. Bitcoin gives them an alternative, gives them a choice. In the same way, yes, they can go buy gold, but in a way, Bitcoin has so many benefits over gold, it makes it a better version of gold in many regards. So that's when it comes to Bitcoin. Second, when it comes to, for example, stable coins, which are digital currencies backed by dollars or any fiat currency, this has many benefits, one of them being, for example, cross-border payments. Today, the average fee for sending money around the world is 7%, which is crazy. In an era where I can send you an email around the world, I can make you a call, or I can make a video message with you around the world, if I do it try to send you money, it becomes very expensive. So the beauty of the stable coins allows you to send money 24/7, almost for free, instantaneously around the world. This is a big thing, especially when it comes to remittances. If you think a country like Armenia, we're only 2-3 million in Armenia, and there's 2-3 times that amount in the outside of the world. There's so much money that comes in, only in remittances, for example, from Europe, other parts of the world come to Armenia. If we're able to solve that issue, reduce the fees, everybody benefits. And then, of course, there's a whole world of blockchain and decentralized assets, where really I'm able to have financial transactions using purely the blockchain technology. Today, your bank decides if they want to bank with you. And if you think about it, many people in the world, just because of where they're born, they're not able to access financial services. If somebody is born in Iran, somebody is born in Libya, somebody is born in Syria, somebody is born in North Korea, and the list goes on and on, Cuba, and the list goes on and on, these people, they didn't make the decision to be born there. The one thing you have no control in your life is where you're born, and this has a material impact on financial services you can access. The beauty of blockchain technology, it's permissionless. Anyone, anywhere, whether rich or poor, regardless if you're man or female, regardless how much money you have, you can access financial services. And that is a bold, I think, and visionary goal that we should aspire to.
For example, today, when the central bank prints a 1,000 dirham bill, it doesn't cost 1,000 dirham to print this. At a time, the emperor, Croesus, realized, what if I standardize money and I come up with something that is 75%, 25% mix of silver and gold? And that's how we had the first coins that appeared. And then we moved on to the first US dollars. The greenback, as we call it back in the day, used to be printed in green because we figured it's the only, nobody's ever going to be able to print in green. This is a great way to avoid fraudsters. This asset class potentially now, is it the new digital gold? Bitcoin has a lot of similarities with gold. The numbers are finite. It's dividable. A bar of gold, you can have a wedding ring, so you can have a bar. Bitcoin goes up to 8 decimals. It doesn't go back. But unlike gold, I can transfer Bitcoin around the world, billions of dollars if I want to, in less than a minute.
What we see as value, as a unit of account, as a medium of exchange, has changed over the years. Back in the day, we used to have cattle. The word capitalism comes actually from the word cattle. We used to use salt. At one point, was the medium of, it was what people saw as value. The word salary comes from the word salt. At one point, it was animal furs, animals. The word buck comes actually from bucks, from the animal. So all these things, what we see as a unit of account and a value has changed over the years. Seashells were probably the most successful form of money we've had for centuries across Africa, and then so on and so forth. So today, of course, we moved to an era where a lot of assets for the last couple hundred years were backed by gold. Since 1971, we live in an anomaly where actually most of currencies in the world, fiat currencies, are not backed by gold. They're just backed by the trust you have towards your government, policymakers, and central banks. And this is an anomaly in our history. Why? I think this Bitcoin changes it. Bitcoin gives an alternative to people to actually be able to hold Bitcoin if they don't trust the remaining of the financial system. Now, in 50, 100, 200, 300, 500,000 years, is Bitcoin going to be the asset we believe in? Probably not. Because, if you look at it even purely historically, every 100 years, what we will see, for example, as a reserve currency of the world has changed. Now it's the US dollar. 100 years ago, it was the British pound. 100 years before, there was a French franc. 100 years before was the Dutch guilder, for example. So, if I come and try to pay you in Dutch guilder now, you laugh at it. But this is why what we see as value has changed over the years. But right now, when I look at the next 50, 100 years, definitely Bitcoin has a role to play. Digital assets have a big role to play. And the whole Web3 decentralization ecosystem has a very interesting role to play.
People, I think, underestimate how much international trade right now settles on stablecoins. If you're a company in Malaysia doing business with a company in Ethiopia, good luck doing this via SWIFT and the banking network. Impossible. Between Bitcoin and gold, 100% I take Bitcoin. I can move it around, it's easier to do. Whether you like Bitcoin or you hate it, my personal recommendation to everybody is buy a bit of Bitcoin. Experiment with it. Give it to your kids as a gift. See how it is. Even if you buy a small amount, it will force you to follow it, learn about it, and understand what it is. Do a transfer, see how it works, and you'll realize how it is. And maybe then afterwards you hate it, and it's totally fine. But at least we have this intellectual, moral duty to try at least to understand what it is. What I find works very well for Christmas, Valentine's Day, baptism, weddings, Women's Day, instead of giving stupid flowers that will die in a week and nobody's going to throw them away, give some Bitcoin. I've been in the crypto space now for 10 years. Since 2013. I spend 24/7 of my time in this space. And I can tell you genuinely, I have no idea what's going to happen 1 month from now. If anybody tells you they're a crypto expert, you see the door there and you run away.
I don't know what will come after Bitcoin and how it will be, but one thing I know is it will probably have the characteristics of a scarce asset. For example, having a finite amount that is issued. In Bitcoin, it's 21 million Bitcoin. Why the reason gold is valuable? Because unless we find new sources of gold, the amount is finite, or we know how much gold is coming in the market. So I think for all these reasons, I think it will have characteristics that are similar to that. But also I think as we move to a decentralized economy, a Web3 economy, digital native assets will be definitely something there. But so many changes are happening with AI. We know from quantum to actually what we're seeing with virtual reality, and even other changes we're seeing that it's very difficult to know what the future of money will look like. One thing I always say to the beginning of all my speeches is I have no idea what the future of money will look like a month from now. So trying to imagine 100, 200 years from now is even almost impossible.